The man who met his soul after death. The man who met his soul after death. Chapter 1. The Man of Science. Introduction. What if a leading neurologist, who once believed that the soul was just an illusion created by the brain, was the first to claim, "I saw my soul after death"? If there is an afterlife, not in religious books or ancient myths, but confirmed by science, by the very man who once rejected all belief in life after death, would you be willing to listen? Do you dare to believe in something that science cannot explain? When the narrator is not a prophet, but a Harvard-educated brain surgeon who died and returned to tell what no language can describe. The story begins. Dr. Eben Alexander is a man of logic, a Harvard-educated neurosurgeon. He doesn't believe in the paranormal. To him, everything must be scientific, measurable, photographable, described, analyzed, and repeatable. The mind, as he was trained and has lived for more than half his life, is a product of the brain, and death is the absolute end, with nothing left behind. He doesn't deny that many patients have reported near-death experiences, light at the end of the tunnel, warm voices, a feeling of being surrounded by love, but in his eyes, it's all a chemical reaction, an explosion of neurotransmitters when the brain runs out of oxygen. Things like the soul, the afterlife, and heaven are all concepts he considers vague, borrowing religious words to comfort those who fear death. It is naive to believe that consciousness continues after the brain stops functioning, he has said at many medical conferences. Eben lived an enviable life. He had it all: fame, academic honors, a position at a top hospital, respect from the medical community. He was a loving father, a devoted husband, and an unwavering man of unwavering faith. Yet, as a paradox of fate, it was he, the one who once denied all metaphysics, who was chosen to cross that boundary, not in a dream, not through a meditation session, but through death. One morning in November 2008, a dangerous bacteria, E. coli causing meningitis, suddenly attacked his brain. Within hours, the entire neocortex, the center of perception and thinking, was completely paralyzed. He fell into a deep coma with a near-fatal prognosis. His best colleagues stood helpless at his bedside. The most modern machines could only maintain his heartbeat and breathing, while his brain, the treasure he had once worshipped as the center of his existence, was almost clinically dead. By all modern medical standards, he could not dream, could not imagine, could not remember. His mind was off, and death, as he himself had believed, was a silent finality. But that's just the beginning of the journey. Chapter 2. Death begins in silence. Death did not come like a raging storm. There was no thunder, no warning. It crept in like a mist, silently invading every cell of his brain. And then, silence. At first it was a mild fever. Dr. Alexander felt unwell, but thought it was just a common cold. But within hours, his body began to collapse. His head was pounding. His neck was as stiff as a rock. He began to lose consciousness. His family was worried and called an ambulance. When he was taken to the emergency room, he did not recognize his wife and children. The doctor on duty looked at his vital signs and paled. In just 3 hours, his condition had progressed so rapidly that all the doctors had to admit this was an extremely rare case of acute E. coli meningitis, and it was destroying his central nervous system at an unimaginable rate. In the ICU, he was put on a ventilator, given the strongest drugs. The best doctors consulted, but in the end, it was all just to buy time. They told the family, "Be prepared. The chance of survival is less than 2%. No one knew that as his body fell into a vegetative state, motionless on the outside, dark on the inside, an extraordinary journey was about to begin. On this side of life, machines still measure heartbeats, still record breathing. But on the other side, from a dimension that no medical science can recreate, Eben Alexander begins to wake up in a completely different sense. No body, no memories, no Eben, no doctor, no father, no me. Only existence floating in a black velvet night, as thick as the primordial universe before the creation of heaven and earth. No voice, but no fear. There is no light, but there is also no darkness in the sense that man knows it. He couldn't call it a dream because it had never felt so clear before. All his dreams before had been hazy, passing like mist. But this place, this space, had an indescribable realness. A feeling so sharp that everything in his previous life seemed like a simulation. Why can a person with no brain function still feel? Why, when the neocortex, the birthplace of consciousness, reasoning and experience, was completely destroyed by bacteria? Was he still there, knowing he was present, even though he could not say his name? The medical world has no answer. But he knew this: if consciousness survives brain death, then it means we are more than this body, more than this brain, more than DNA and reflexes. He began to drift, slowly and aimlessly. There was no time. There was no concept of before or after. Everything was simultaneous. He was both a tiny point in nothingness and the entire breathing universe. And then, a sound seemed to begin to rise. Not a voice, not music, but a form of wordless melody, like a wave of vibrations spreading through the nameless, wandering mind. The melody did not resound as we hear the sound of a guitar. It appeared in his mind as clear as if he had always known it, like an echo of a place he once belonged to. With that sound, light began to appear from nothing, not blinding, not cold, but warm like the embrace of a mother whose face you never knew, but whose soul you always remembered. He began to feel guided, as if an invisible hand was pulling him through layers of reality, each layer different from everything he had ever known, ever been taught, ever believed. It is no longer the realm of death. It is another level of reality, more alive than any definition. Chapter 3. A universe without time. There were probably no words in any language on Earth that could accurately describe the place he had been. But he knew one thing for sure: it was no dream. It was no product of a dying mind. It was no hallucination. It was more real than reality, more vivid than life. It began in a golden mist, where he drifted without body, without form. A dimension with no beginning, no end, where the concept of time completely dissolved. There was no before, after, now. There was only pure presence. Then suddenly, like dawn breaking through deep sleep, everything exploded into light. He found himself gliding, not with wings, but with a form of pure will. Below, there was not the ground, but a grassland filled with color, with grass so green it was impossible, flowers blooming that made sounds, music with shape, light with flavor, emotions with texture. He flew above a river of light, escorted by giant butterflies, not the kind he had seen before, but beings from another dimension, imbued with pure knowledge and gentle wisdom. Not far from him was a woman, or rather, a spirit in female form. She had no name, but when her eyes looked at him, all the worries, all the doubts, all the fears he had carried in his human life completely disappeared. She didn't speak, but her message was as clear as a vow engraved in her soul. You are loved. You are protected. There is nothing you need to fear. He didn't know who she was, but the bond he felt was beyond any kinship he had ever felt. It was as if their souls had danced in the same universe countless lifetimes ago, and now they were reunited in the most exhilarating of joys. The world around him was not just beautiful, it was alive. Everything vibrated with an ancient wisdom. The sky did not stand still. It moved in rhythm, like musical waves. The flowers did not just bloom, they sang. The light did not just shine, but permeated every molecule of the soul. And he understood somehow that love was not an emotion here. Love was a law of physics, a universal constant, the essence of everything. In contrast to the physical world, where love is often distorted by selfishness, conditions, and fear, here love is the fundamental structure of all existence. No reason, no conditions. Eben Alexander, who once stood on the medical podium to refute everything related to the soul, now felt more clearly than ever that he was an inseparable part of a great and sacred whole. Another message, unspoken, resonated within him. You are a soul experiencing the physical world. It is not the body that carries the soul. It is the soul that chooses the body to learn, to feel, to love. Every thought that had not yet formed in his mind was answered by light, images, and feelings. In this place, understanding does not need words. Learning does not need time. Love does not need proof. He looked back on his life, the surgeries, the neuroscience, the rigorous lectures, the skepticism of anything that couldn't be measured by scientific instruments. And he cried, not because of regret, but because for the first time in his life, he felt truly small before the vastness of creation. And he knew there is an eternal life that surpasses death. A reality where the soul is not bound by flesh and thought. Chapter 4, The Fateful Encounter. Time, if it could be called that, flowed like a nameless river in the world Eben was in. There was no day or night, no heartbeat, just a state of pure existence, one with the endless flow of love. And in that flow, he is not alone. That woman was always by his side, without separation, without attachment, as if she were a part of his soul, since before the world existed. Without word, but every glance, every smile, every light that radiated from her presence reminded him of something he had never known. She did not give him knowledge. She gave him awareness, something that cannot be read in books, cannot be taught in words. The awareness that he was once a part of something greater than himself, and she was the one who awakened it. At that moment, he didn't need to know who she was, didn't need a name, didn't need a relationship. Because the love between them, pure, quiet, and immense, needed no reason, didn't need a title, but fate always has a way of putting the right answer in the right place at the right time. Return after 7 days in a deep coma, when all medical indicators had prepared him for death. He woke up, not slowly, but suddenly, like someone lit up my whole body from within. The nurse screamed. The doctor was stunned. The family burst into tears. He returned, and he remembered, not like a fleeting dream, but like a memory deeply engraved in his being, clear in every color, every expression, every nameless melody. The first thing he wanted to say was not, "I had a dream" or "I heard something," but I was in a place where there was no fear, and I was not alone. No one understood. No one could explain. In the medical records, his entire neocortex was completely paralyzed. That is, unable to dream, unable to imagine, unable to have consciousness. But he did. And he knew it was true. However, the part that moved him the most was not the survival, but the woman. Her image was imprinted in his mind. Her soft hair, her eyes filled with endless love, her smile that made all suffering recede like clouds before the sun. He couldn't ignore it. He drew her face, in flashbacks, in his diary. A face both strange and hauntingly familiar. The fateful picture. A few weeks into his recovery, Eben received a call from his biological family, from whom he had been separated as a child through adoption. They invited him to meet them, to reconnect with a relationship he had thought he had forgotten. During the meeting, they gave him a photo. "This is Betsy, your real sister." They said, "She died many years ago in an accident. You never met her, but we thought you should know." He picked up the photo, and the world around seemed to stop breathing. Those eyes, that smile, that unconditional love. It was the woman who flew with him on the wings of light butterflies, the one who guided him to the other world, the one who did not speak her name, but left a mark in his heart. Eben collapsed, not from shock, but because all the pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place. That woman was not just a spiritual guide, not just a symbol of pure love, but also his real sister, someone he had never met in his life, but his soul always knew. Chapter 5: Resurrection and the Answer. Eben Alexander's recovery shocked the hospital. No one on the medical team, nurses, doctors, or resuscitation specialists, would dare call it normal. It was a biological miracle. He didn't just come back to life. He didn't have any neurological damage, no memory loss, no slowed reflexes, no clouded reasoning. Instead, he returned with a new vision of reality, a different wisdom, not like the Eben Alexander of old, but like a version remolded by the pure love of the universe. Facing the science we once believed in the early days of his return, he kept quiet, partly because he doubted himself, partly because he knew as a doctor, a researcher, a Harvard man, his story would be rejected, even ridiculed. Who would believe a scientist who says he flew on the wings of a butterfly of light and met his dead sister, whom he had never met in real life? Who would accept a neurologist who claims there is a world beyond consciousness, when his brain has stopped functioning? And then, one day, he looked back at the notes he had taken after waking up. He looked at the MRI, the medical records, the length of his coma. All the medical data could not explain how he could have consciousness when his cerebral cortex was no longer functioning. There, he no longer doubted if my consciousness still exists when the part of the brain responsible for it is completely paralyzed. Then consciousness does not come from the brain. Reveal the truth, he started writing, not to be famous, but as a sacred mission he had to carry out, page after page. Memories of the world of light, of music, of wordless love, of a soul sister, all written with a trembling but steady heart. Finally, the book, Proof of Heaven, was born, and as fate would have it, the book became a global phenomenon. Millions of people read it. Many cried, many were skeptical, many scientists protested, but many people, from patients to bereaved people, to priests, to doctors, felt something in their hearts confirmed. Because this is not the story of a believer, a prophet, or someone who sees the light at the end of the tunnel. This is the story of a neurologist, a person who used to believe in nothing, but could not ignore the truth he saw. Overcoming the fear of rejection. Eben Alexander's story is more than a memoir. It challenges the entire belief system of modern medicine. And what he faced was not only the reaction from the scientific community, but also the fear of being misunderstood, of being seen as paranoid. But he did not back down, because the truth he saw was not for himself. It was given to him as a responsibility. Once, when asked, "Are you sure you're not deluding yourself?" he smiled, eyes looking far away. "If it was just a dream, how could I meet the sister I never knew? If it was just an illusion, How could it contain love that surpasses all definitions and leaves such a clear mark in my heart until today? From a doctor to an inspiration, Eben began traveling the world speaking at medical conferences, meeting ordinary people, recounting his journey on television, podcasts, spiritual conferences, not to convince, but to give a piece of the truth to anyone who was ready to receive it. He did not found a sect. He did not preach. He simply shared as someone who had just returned from a journey without a map. With only one luggage, love is the foundation of everything. We do not die. We only change our form of existence. Chapter 6: Soul and Science. As the public outcry over his story exploded, Eben Alexander faced more than just the public. He faced the intellectual establishment that had raised him, where science was seen as the only guiding light. And in that light, everything that cannot be proven is eliminated. So how can someone who once believed that consciousness is a product of the brain now stand up and assert the opposite, while still maintaining honesty, conscience, and scientific spirit consciousness? Is it really in the brain? For centuries, modern medicine has built the view that the brain is where consciousness is born. But Eben's experience, along with thousands of recorded near-death experiences around the world, is increasingly suggesting otherwise. The brain does not create consciousness. It is only a tool for transmitting consciousness. Just like a radio doesn't create music, it just receives and transmits signals from an invisible source. From here, Eben was no longer alone. He began to delve into the field known as border science, where quantum physics, Eastern philosophy, and ancient theology collide. Quantum science, the bridge to the spirit world. The quantum world, microscopic, unpredictable, but full of possibilities, opens up an opportunity for Eben. If particles can be in many places at once, if observers can change the results of measurements, if information can instantly cross space, then why can't consciousness exist independently of matter? He read about David Bohm, Max Planck, Roger Penrose, Stuart Hameroff, great minds who doubted that matter is everything. Consciousness is the basis of all things. Max Planck once said, the father of quantum physics. Eben began to ask the question, if the universe is programmed by law, then who or what programmed it? If every action leads to a consequence, is there an intelligence behind that order? Meet outside-the-box thinkers. He sought out theologians, Zen masters, philosophers, near-death researchers, consciousness experts, and in each person, he found a piece of the puzzle. A Tibetan monk once told him, "We knew what you had just experienced, but we didn't have an MRI to prove it." An old priest in Italy said, "We don't need to argue anymore." Your story is the bridge. A neuroscientist in Germany admitted, "We also saw something wrong with the old theory, but we were afraid to say it." And Eben understood. It is not that science is wrong. It is that science is reaching its own limits. And the soul is not beyond science. It is waiting for science to call it by its right name. A new definition of human in a public lecture. Eben said, "We are not physical beings seeking spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings temporarily residing in physical bodies to learn a brief lesson about love." From a doctor, he became the one who connected two worlds, the world of machines, data, logic, and the world of feelings, souls, immortality. Neither negates, but connects both as two sides of the coin of truth. Chapter 7, Message Left for Humanity. There comes a time when every human being, whether scientific or spiritual, believer or non-believer, will face an inevitable question. Who am I when I am no longer this body after a journey through death, resurrection, and connection with the deepest levels of consciousness? Eben Alexander has the answer, not through theory, but through experience. And he knows that experience is not just for him. It was given so that he brings back a message, like a soldier returning from the front lines of life. The world is thirsting for pure truth. Modern humans live in the age of data, artificial intelligence, space exploration, but are also lonely, empty, and doubtful about their very existence. We can send spacecraft to Mars, but we don't know where do I go after my last breath. We can measure heart rates, scan brains, edit genes, but we don't know what is love if it isn't a chemical reaction. Eben didn't come to teach, to prove, or to argue. He came as someone who had gone through the final door, then returned and whispered, "You are not just a body. You are an immortal soul. Love beyond imagination. Love the soul's gravity." During his out-of-body experience, he realized love is not an emotion. It is a structure. It is the foundation of reality. It is the glue that holds the stars, the planets, and the souls together. If you are suffering, betrayed, or lost, know that you are not alone. There is a deeper, broader reality that surrounds you like light surrounds a raindrop. And there you were forgiven before you made a mistake, loved before you were born. Everyone is a messenger. Eben's message is not for you to read and forget. It is a reminder. Live with kindness. Forgive, even when others don't apologize. Love, even when the world becomes hard. Know that death is not the end, but a door to the next stage. You don't need to have a near-death experience to believe that. Just listen deeply to your heart. Your soul always knows what is true. Conclusion. The gift of death. Eben Alexander is no longer the old doctor. He is the one who died and came back to tell we are not forgotten. We are not abandoned. We are held in the arms of an infinitely loving intelligence. And when you understand that, you will no longer fear death, but will begin to truly live.